Hi everyone. Okay, in this video I feel compelled to talk to you about Compulsion. This is a movie from 1959, and I will touch upon a few other movies that are kind of related to it. This is a movie that is based upon the case of Leopold and Loeb, who were two gay Chicago university students who had a real lack of empathy and who decided to commit a murder in 1924 and see if they could get away with it. They were eventually caught, they did go to trial, and they were sentenced to life imprisonment. So anybody who has seen the films of Alfred Hitchcock is no doubt familiar with the film Rope. Now that film was very loosely based on the case of Leopold and Loeb. I mean, they changed the characters, they changed the circumstances of the murder, made it a single location movie. So yeah, quite far removed from the actual case. Compulsion, on the other hand, again has change of character names, but is a little bit more closely associated with the actual events. And so we do see the murder, we do see the characters of Leopold and Loeb, even though their character names are changed, and we also get to see the trial that they went to. So very significantly, we have Dean Stockwell and Bradford Dillman as the characters of Leopold and Loeb, and we have Orson Welles here as the lawyer who represents them at trial. Now, again, they've changed all the character names, but the actual lawyer that Orson Welles is playing in this film is based on Clarence Darrow. So Clarence Darrow was a lawyer who got involved in some very significant cases, and in fact anybody who has seen the film Inherit the Wind, starring Spencer Tracy, that was another case that Clarence Darrow was involved with, a case about Darwinism. So yeah, really interesting film, this one. Well performed. Dean Stockwell had actually played the character already on the stage. This was adapted from a book by Meyer Levin, and it did have problems because at the time that the book came out, Nathan Leopold was against the book and felt that it was an invasion of privacy, and so when this film's production had actually finished, he did file a lawsuit. So that had real complications for the film itself, because the lawsuit went on for some close to 10 years, which affected this film being distributed. So maybe that's partly why it hasn't built up the reputation that it really strongly deserves. I mean, at the time, all three leading actors here won the Best Actor award at Cannes. But like I say, the US distribution of the film was delayed for close to 10 years. But it's a really interesting film. The script here is by Richard Murphy, who had also been involved in other sort of crime realism dramas, such as Elia Kazan's Panic on the Streets. And the cinematography here by William C. Mellor is quite interesting as well, and it touches upon on the Laserdisc here the fact that in certain scenes that feature both the criminal characters, quite often the cinematography is a little off to suggest that there is something not quite right with them. So yeah, really interesting stuff there. The film is directed by Richard Fleischer. Now Richard Fleischer is no stranger to directing true life crime stories, because he also directed later on in his career that excellent The Boston Strangler, starring Tony Curtis and Henry Fonda. And then later on as well, 10 Rillington Place, starring Richard Attenborough and John Hurt. Really fantastic films, those. So yeah, Compulsion is really interesting. Now, the legal character here, like I say, Clarence Darrow, what's interesting is that apparently in the actual case, when these two guys went to trial, it would have been a trial by jury, and inevitably they would have been sentenced to death at the time. So what the lawyer did instead was to immediately plead that they were guilty, so that he could then just have a trial by the judge. And apparently he did a really lengthy 60,000 word monologue to the judge to plead the case that they were mentally unfit men who didn't deserve to die, but should instead have life imprisonment. And that is actually what they ended up getting. Now, in the film, we don't get that full speech. It is reduced to about 15 minutes or so. But yeah, still a really interesting scene featuring Orson Welles here. So yeah, all in all, this is a really fascinating film based on the events of Leopold and Loeb. Now, it has to be said that when Alfred Hitchcock made his movie Rope, and also when Compulsion was made in the 1950s, this was still at a time where the Hays Code was relevant, and so representations of homosexuality weren't really that permissible on screen. So it's interesting also to jump forward to 1992 and watch the movie Swoon. Now, this is a movie that's made in black and white, quite an avant-garde style, and again it changes the character names, but it does seem to be a lot more faithful, if you like, to the actual events of the Leopold and Loeb case, and also the aftermath as well. So it doesn't really spend much time looking at the legal case and the Clarence Darrow character at all, but it does go beyond that to their time in prison as well. And really the interesting thing about Swoon is it is made at a time when they can sort of represent the homosexual side of their characters in a lot more open and explicit ways. And so that really feeds into the sense of these guys having this lack of empathy, and also the kind of power control dynamics between them two as well. So yeah, really interesting film to watch is Swoon. And then another film that's interesting to watch, which didn't really have the best reviews when it came out, but it deserves a bit more attention than it's got, is this one, Murder by Numbers from 2002, starring Sandra Bullock, Ryan Gosling and Michael Pitt. And this is directed by Barbet Schroeder. And Barbet Schroeder is quite an interesting director because he has made films such as Reversal of Fortune, which really do look at these kind of real life characters who have a lack of empathy. So this one was kind of dismissed a bit as being a bit of a Hollywood version, but there is some really interesting aspects about it. So again, we have two fictional characters here played by Ryan Gosling and Michael Pitt, who are bored rich kids who decide that they're going to carry out a murder just to see if they can get away with it and taunt the police. But what makes this one a little bit different is that the film focuses a lot more on the police investigator played by Sandra Bullock, and she's got her own internal demons as well, and really has, in a sense as well, her own sort of lack of empathy in certain regards as well. So this one pushes the dynamics of that a little bit more and actually brings her into play with these two, because the closer they get to the case, the more these two actually manipulate each other by using sexuality and jealousy to drive themselves further apart. So yeah, there's a lot of power play dynamics that are going on in this film. So yes, it does resort to a sort of conventional kind of ending, which is perhaps a little bit disappointing, but there is some interesting stuff going on in this film. And then talking of Michael Pitt, you could relate also the Michael Haneke remake of Funny Games, in which Michael Pitt starred, because that also is about a couple of guys who have a lack of empathy, who are committing a murder. But the difference with that film is that it focuses much more on the psychology of the murder itself and the prolonged nature of it, and that sort of torture element. So a different angle once again. But there we go, just a few different angles on the case of Leopold and Loeb from 1924. Have any of you seen any of these movies? Let me know your thoughts and comments. Thanks very much for watching. All the best to you. Bye-bye.